Participants.
Yes, sir, you are.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, all of you. Welcome to the first session of day 5. The expert of this session is Professor Vishal Barot, sir. He is assistant professor in Computer Engineering Department of LDRP Institute of Technology. He is having more than decade of teaching experience. We are having opportunity of learning original development set and smart development set from the dignitaries. So without wasting a time, I am handing over to the expert of the session, Professor Vishal Barot, sir. Please, sir.
Thank you, sir. Am I audible properly to everyone? Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. So, good morning to all present over here. Today, we are going to discuss something about original set and smooth. So, first, let me start with the very basic fundamental. Let me just first share my screen. Okay, so today we are going to discuss about the development set and smooth. This is more or less related to a pre-processing step of machine learning model. So we are going to discuss the couple of things. I would like to begin with what is original development set, followed by imbalanced data set and challenges faced when we have imbalanced data set to feed to our machine learning model. Then we move ahead with the approaches that how can we handle this imbalanced data set, basically how to create a balanced data set to feed to this machine learning model, and then the implementation of the same. We are going to discuss couple of techniques of data level and algorithmic approaches to handle the data set. So first, to start with, I would like to give the introduction about the key point of the original development set. Now, the meaning of original development set is what? Whenever we are going to perform any kind of machine learning problem, we are going to solve machine learning problem. The first thing and the most important thing is data. Now, when we talk about data, it is very, very important to understand the data first and then to apply that data to our machine learning model. From my experience in this field, I can say that whenever you are going to solve this machine learning problem, 80% of your efforts you should apply in the kind of data collection and data pre-processing part in such a way that they can feed the meaningful, insightful data to your machine learning model, and 20% part to hyperparameter tuning of your model, or to to finalize the model that can be suited for your application. So as I said, 80% effort required to this data pre-processing step and to formulate the data. Why we need this much effort to be applied when we are dealing with basically a machine learning application? So the first reason is, when we talk about data, there are nowadays couple of sources are available like Kaggle, UCI repositories, some social media platforms are also available to acquire the data set. But when we talk about the raw format of data, when we collect the data basically comes from various sources. If we talk very deeply, then we understand that the data can come from sensors, website log, synthetic data also can be generated, social media, satellite data, some healthcare data. That kind of data can be summarized and formulated in such a way that can be applied to our machine learning model. The important thing over here is what? Whenever we acquire some real-time data, like I said, from healthcare domain, if I'm trying to retrieve some data of a patient's number of patients at a particular hospital, so at that time, this could be my original set, that original raw data that I'm going to collect based on some sensor and based on some IoT devices, or let's say some pre-processing steps. Now what happens when you collect this data? This data is actually not very well formatted data, very well processed data. Initially, when you collect this data, that data may contain some missing values. Some missing value, which means that data may not be recorded properly, or some noise is there, which is basically an outlier of this particular data set. So what we need to do when you have the original data set, before applying that data set to your machine learning model, that is pre-processing step. And that pre-processing involves so many things, like I said, you need to handle this missing value, you need to remove the noise, you need to apply some feature scaling, you need to identify the collinearity. There are so many things you need to, again, when you have the string data, we know that our machine learning model only understand numbers. So whenever you have some categorical data like string format data, you need to process that data into the numbers, because our machine only understand numbers. So these are the pre-processing that you need to perform. While performing this pre-processing, why this pre-processing is needed? Because it may possible that from our data set there are, for an example, if I have, let's say, 20 features, 20 columns. Okay, so out of 20 columns there are only 7 to 8 columns which are dominant for my target variable. So I need to remove other features as well. If I do not remove it, there is problem of high collinearity between those columns, and hence my performance would be biased or performance would be unexpected. So that's why this pre-processing that we have to perform. And this is basically a technique to provide the raw data in such a way that it makes suitable for building and training our machine learning model. When we do this, when we have some real-time data, as I said, so it is it can be incomplete, inconsistent, inaccurate. So it often lacks about some specific attribute. So that's why, to provide or to get the meaningful information from the data, and if your data contains this many errors, so at that time it is kind of yes, it is kind of tough for you to formulate that data in a model, and ultimately your expectation of your model, let's say in terms of accuracy, if you expect that the accuracy of my model should be 80 greater than 80%, so it is not possible every time, because you do not provide the proper training data. And if you do not provide it, you definitely need to go through some problem like inefficient machine learning model, or at the time of expectation running your model will not give you the perfect data. So these are the steps that I have mentioned in the pre-processing step. But one important step that we do not include at the time of mentioning the topics of pre-processing, or while implementing the pre-processing topics, which is balancing the data set. Now it is also important to understand that how we get to know that, okay, this data set that I'm using, it is imbalanced data set. Or first of all, what is imbalanced data set? So imbalanced data set, which clearly says that your data set is not balanced. Not balanced, basically it refers to let's understand a classification problem on yes and no are the target variables, right? So it refers to a classification problem where the number of observation per class is not equally distributed. Equally distributed by I mean that some of the records, okay, in my data set, let's say there are 1000 tuples, 1000 rows. Out of those 1000 rows, let's say 900 rows belong to one class and 100 rows belongs to another class. So this is not properly distributed data that you have. And when you have this large amount of data which belongs to one class and very fewer observation which belongs to another class, this is a kind of problem of imbalanced data set. So if we take an example, there are many examples, but if we take a simple example of, let's say, credit card transaction to check whether it is fraudulent transaction or not. So at that time, if we have, let's say, 10,000 transaction, for 10,000 transaction, if we have one fraudulent transaction, so think about the case, if we have ultimately 50,000 transaction, so we do have only 5 transactions which are fraudulent. Understood? And 50,000 rows, 50,000 transaction available which are authenticate. So this is the problem when we have imbalanced data set. And when you are dealing with such imbalanced data set, your result will always be biased to your class. Which class? The class has very huge amount of data, which is known as majority class, that I'm going to tell you in a bit that what is majority and what is minority class. But it is very intuitive that the class which has the maximum number of records out of your data set is known as majority class, and the other one is known as minority class. So this data set is imbalanced or balanced, that we need to check. And the example of imbalanced data set could be anything which has which contains a rare event. A rare event by I mean, for an example, if I say the credit card transaction, so whenever you perform, let's say, the Google Pay transaction or if Google Pay provides the transaction of, let's say, a specific state of India. So at that time, what happens? There are many transactions which are proper one, which are authenticate transaction. Very less number of transaction which are fraudulent transaction. Which means what? That event of occurring fraudulent transaction is very, very less. So at that time, just because we have acquired the data, original data, we do not have sufficient data about the fraudulent transaction. And hence what happens when once we are ready with our model, we try to fit this data. So it is always going to be done that whenever our model predicts something, it is always be biased to the majority class. It is obvious that it will bias to the class for normal transaction, authenticate transaction. So whenever we provide such imbalanced data, this problem arises. And mostly when you can say that there are some chances that this data can be imbalanced. So first remember one thing: whenever you are dealing with a problem which basically you are trying to classify an event which is very, very rare. So if I talk about a specific disease, let's say XYZ disease, which is very, very rare. Okay, so now I'm collecting data from a particular hospital where they have the data of number of patients, and some of the patients have that particular disease XYZ, and the other patient have not that disease. So obviously this is very, very rare disease. So that's why we do not have sufficient amount of records belong to that particular class. So that's why this class is known as minority class, and this is known as kind of rare event. So you basically need to understand that which problem has this kind of imbalanced data set. Okay, so you need to understand only one thing when you are going to classify. Always think about this, the number of times you are going to collect the rare event. So that's why there are some example listed over here, like as I said, healthcare domain. The second one is anomaly detection in transaction, fraudulent detection, customer churn identification, diagnosis of rare disease, helicopter gearbox fault monitoring. So you can basically include any example which has rare event. For an example, if I talk about let's say the basically a company which handles the used cars. So at that time, and at the time of used car, if they provide the car evaluation data set to us, so at that time the performance of the car is very, very good, or let's say more than just very good, excellent performance. So obviously we will have less number of records of a data set for a particular car which gives the best performance, excellent performance, right? So in that case, by looking at the problem definition, intuitively you can say that okay, there are some chances that this particular data set may be imbalanced, and hence we need to focus on this imbalanced data set. This is a kind of pre-processing problem, because whenever you are going to apply your data to the model, whatever you do, it falls into the category of pre-processing. So this is again a very, very important thing, that how to know that there are some chances that my data set is balanced or imbalanced. So the imbalanced data set is not properly distribution of your records. That is what imbalanced data set is. Now if we talk about transaction data set or any data set, let's say here I have taken example of transaction data sets. So let's understand this, that the rare event, whenever you have this kind of rare event, what the meaning of rare event is. So understand that we have total number of records are 1000. When we have 1000 records, and out of 1000 records, we do have 20 records which are fraudulent transaction and 980 records which are normal authenticate transactions. So see the percentage, 2% and 98%. The meaning of this is what, that we do have, there are some chances that once you have trained your model, and if somebody gives you a record, that please check, please predict this kind of record would be a fraudulent transaction or non-fraudulent transaction. So at that time, just because we have trained our model with 98% records of authenticate records, non-fraudulent transaction, so there are high chances that it will give that this particular record or this transaction would be a non-fraudulent transaction, because our model is biased toward not fraudulent, right? So whenever you understand, whenever you calculate the number of records, the counter of your records or target variable, and if it is less than 5%, if it is less than 5%, you can say that this is a kind of rare event. And wherever you understand that okay, this rare event exists, this term exists in my application, you need to check whether your data set is perfectly balanced or not. If it is not balanced, you need to apply some kind of processing again, after traditional steps to perform pre-processing, like removing noise, feature scaling, feature extraction, feature importance. After that, you need to do this. You need to perform this balancing. And once you have the balanced data, there are high chances that you can get the exact result. It may be possible that your model has not accuracy greater than 90%, but whatever the accuracy is, it will not be biased to any of the class. So whenever you have rare event, you need to consider that this data set could be, the imbalanced data set. Now, if you, let's say, if for an example, if you forget to check whether that is existence of rare event or not, whether there is existence of, imbalanced data set in my problem or not. So what you can do is, you can basically train your model. You check the accuracy of your model just because it is classification. If it is not classification, you might have go for this F1 score and MSE and all. But if this is a classification problem, what you are going to do is, you are simply going to check your accuracy. And just because the accuracy of that particular model can be 98%, so you will be happy that, okay, yes, my model is well trained, and now the accuracy of my model is 98%. But think about the case in reality, when we are trying to, we will predict that a particular patient has a cancer, but your model says that, okay, this patient is normal patient, this patient does not suffer from cancer. Think about this. Is very, very remarkable that whenever we are going to predict something, it is our responsibility to check everything before applying or before deployment. So why we discuss about only accuracy at the time of evaluation? So whenever you have this classification problem, it is advisable that do not only focus on accuracy, because if you have imbalanced data set, or well, let me tell you in very layman, once you implement your machine learning problem and you find that your accuracy is 90, greater than 90 or greater than 95%, you simply do not rely on this mechanism. You need to, back propagation. You need to apply the back propagation. Why back propagation? To check every step again, that, okay, this data set, there must be something. I'm not saying that every time there may be a problem, but in the first attempt, without applying much efforts, if you get 90 or 95% accuracy, it is good. But for safer side, you need to check whether we have applied proper pre-processing or not, whether my model is biased or not. If you can check it, and after that, if your accuracy is, let's say, 90% or decrease by 2 or 3%, it is absolutely fine. That would be a proper deployable model that you can, deploy the model in real-time application. So yes, these are the evaluation metrics that we can use: model accuracy, confusion matrix, precision and recall, F1 and F2 score. It is again based on the precision and recall, and AUC and ROC curve. It is my personal practice whenever I am dealing with any classification problem, especially when I'm dealing with, the data set which is I have collected, or real-time data that is not provided by any standard platform like Kaggle or UCI. At that time, I must check this many parameters just to authenticate whether my model is performing well or not. Now, what are the challenges that you face if you have imbalance problem? The first thing that we face when we have imbalanced data set, that your prediction accuracy is very, very high. But ultimately, when you have imbalanced data set, you get the unsatisfactory classifier model. And that unsatisfactory classifier model, which clearly means that your model is not able to, justify the number of records. That this particular record should be in this class 1, but your model says that no, this should be in class 0. So which means we cannot have this satisfactory result, because our models would be biased. This is very, very important to understand, that whenever you have biased model, at that time you cannot get, your accuracy may be fine, your accuracy may be good, but whenever you have this bad data set, your model is not a deployable model, or you cannot, or you should not apply this model to predict the real-time events. Okay, and at that time, just because we had discussed the example of 2% and 98%, that 2% will be the minority class, and it will be treated as noise, which means it cannot consider that particular points while training, and hence at the time of testing or at the time of deployment, your model will not able to identify that particular moment, because at the time of training, the minority class points will be would have been treated with this noise. So this is the problem. So consider the same case if the data set there are 98% majority class, 2% minority class observation. So whenever you are going to perform this classifier, so at that time, by ignoring the 2% minority class as noise, your model accuracy will be 98%, and you say that you feel good that okay, my model is 98% accuracy, which is very, very good. So now what I can do is I can deploy this model, or I can publish the paper, or I can do something. But before doing this, you need to apply some kind of sense to the pre-process steps. That is very, very crucial and very, very important. So this is the problem that we face when we have imbalanced data. Now we understood what imbalanced data set is. Why imbalanced data set? There is a problem of imbalanced data set just because there are some real-time data coming from various heterogeneous or homogeneous sources, and the data of the imbalanced data can be generated. Now, what is the problem of imbalanced data set? That we have also discussed. Now, let's move ahead with how to handle that imbalanced data set. Basically, before applying this model, you need to put one unit in front of your model deployment that okay, the data must go through what must go through this unit, and that unit is to handle this imbalanced data. Now, to handle this imbalanced data, widely being used techniques are data level approaches and algorithmic ensemble techniques. There are two major techniques: data level approaches and algorithm ensemble technique. So we are going to see each of them in detail, that what is random undersampling, random oversampling, cluster oversampling. Why it is known as data level? Because in all these mentioned techniques, what we are going to do is we are going to manipulate the data. We are going to deal with the data directly. But at the time of when we discuss this ensemble technique, they do not modify the data. They do not deal with the data. They have created, or they have the logic to deal with this data in such a way that automatically by I mean with this logic that they have inside the mechanism, they basically remove this bias part. And so that's why it is known as ensemble technique, and this is known as data level technique. In all these techniques, we are definitely going to see that how they manipulate the data, or how they are going to deal with the data. So first, let's understand this random undersampling and random oversampling. Then we'll go with this cluster base, and finally we'll go with smooth and the variants of smooth. So first, to start with this random undersampling and oversampling, first we need to clear with the concept that what is undersampling and oversampling. See, as name suggests, if we talk about undersampling, so undersampling clearly means it is also known as downsampling. So undersampling clearly means that you have majority class, you have minority class. So you are going to downsample the class which has huge amount of records. So in this example, we are going to consider that if this is my majority class and if this is my minority class, I am going to reduce, I am going to delete, I am going to eliminate some of the records from the majority class, and I'm going to try to make it equal to the minority class. So that is known as downsampling. If we are going to perform oversampling, which means what? Now you are not going to touch to your majority class. You are going to perform operation to your minority class, and in case of oversampling or upsampling, what you do is you are going to manipulate the data in the minority class in such a way that ultimately after applying that process, you will have a kind of balanced data set. Kind of, why I'm not saying perfectly balanced, because no, it is not, there are some techniques that do not believe that the number of record must be equal. If you say that you have the technique which provides the result in such a way that they have perfectly balanced data, which means the records of both the classes must be equal. But some of the technique do not believe that. Okay? This is not necessary to predict the accuracy or the predict the result. It is not necessary. So this is basically undersampling and oversampling. Undersampling, which means eliminate records. Oversampling, which means create copy or replicate the records. And by doing this, you will have the equal number of records. So first techniques which uses undersampling, downsampling method, which is random undersampling. Now the word which is very, very important, random undersampling. As I said, in downsampling or in random sampling, what we do is, in the random sampling, we are going to reduce the number of records, we are going to eliminate the number of records. So how we are going to eliminate it? On random basis. And on random basis, when you are going to eliminate the records, which clearly means that it tries to balance the distribution of class randomly. It randomly eliminates the majority class example. No logic behind it. Randomly it selects that this many example I would like to delete, so it will delete on random basis. So you think about this technique, this is not at all recommended, because when you are going to delete the number of records on random basis, what happens exactly is, at that time there are high chances that some useful information may be discarded, and hence we cannot predict perfectly basically. So when you use this random nature, at the time you cannot give guarantee that okay, all kind of transaction I have captured. So that is basically, you know, a kind of disadvantage of random undersampling. So you can consider this: if we have 20 fraudulent transaction, 990 authenticate transaction, out of that, if you decide that I would like to go with 10%, this is again a random number, of 980, at that time you will have 98 records generated, or the other records are removed, discarded from this majority class. And if you, the total would be now 118, and if you find that this is a 70% of 118, which means greater than 5%, so it is now not a rare event. So that's why you can apply this data to your model now, because greater than 5% is quite from the research, they have derived this threshold that 5% is okay, greater than 5% is okay, and we have 70%, 17%, so it is absolutely fine. So the advantage of this technique is what? But just because we are reducing the number of records, obviously the computation will be low. I mean, the computation will be faster. You know, computation time would be low, and obviously it reduced the storage problem because you do not have much records. But still, it is not recommended at all if you have, you know, the last option available. So then and then you can go with this random undersampling. Otherwise, do not go for it, just because this point that you are going to miss this useful information, and hence your model cannot perfectly predict. The next technique, which is again random in nature, which is oversampling or upsampling. So when we are going to upsample in a specific class, let's say in minority class, so what happens basically, when you have this 2% and 98%, we are going to select this figure randomly, that okay, we would like to replicate the record 20 times. So we will have the 400 records and 990 records. So what it does is, it basically performs the class distribution in random nature by increasing minority class example. It performs, you know, replication, and replication, which means same record again and again and again, you know, that what replication means. So when you perform this replication number of times, and when you are going to feed this data to your model, it is very, very obvious that your model will be overfitted, because the same number of transaction have been provided so many times. So there are no threshold, there are no boundaries. So you are going to repeat the same transaction again and again and again. So it will lead to your overfitting problem. So these two techniques are not at all recommended. Next one is cluster-based oversampling. See, this cluster-based oversampling and downsampling, there are two ways of cluster-based. So in the cluster-based technique, they are using k-means clustering basically. And I'm sure that you all are aware with k-means clustering or what clustering technique is. So I'm not going in detail, but this k-means clustering algorithm is applied to this two data sets. I mean, not two data sets, but two classes, if we talk about binary classification. So this applied to minority and majority, both the classes, not a single class, both the classes, in such a way that it creates a number of clusters. You know, it depends on the k value, it depends on the k value, and it generates the clusters. So after generating the clusters, it guarantees that whatever the data points residing in my cluster should be equal in all the sets. So you can see that cluster 1 and cluster 2 are minority class clusters and majority class clusters. So k-means clustering is applied in such a way that you need to decide that, okay, this many are the records in my minority class and majority class. So now each cluster is oversampled or undersampled in such a way that the cluster of the same class, this cluster of the same class, have an equal number of records, have an equal number of observation. So and okay, again, this is, you know, all classes are in proportion. So it does not mean that it goes to 1700 and it is 80. So it is again not equally proportional. So it guarantees that in cluster based oversampling that it tries to balance all the data points in a cluster. If I talk about cluster centroid based downsampling method, it is again very, very simple. I have not kept a separate PPT of it because it is very, very simple. Let me just tell you in brief. Cluster centroid based downsampling, which means what it does, suppose my data set has a class, majority class, which has 1000 records, 1000 observation, which means it is majority class. Now 200 records in my minority class. So what happens exactly when this cluster centered downsampling applies? It basically tells this class to reduce, to downsample the number of samples, but now not in random nature. They basically create 200 clusters. For this majority class, they create 200 clusters. Individual cluster would be created. So you think about this, from the 1000 point, there would be 200 unique clusters will be created. And after creating this 200 clusters, they'll find the cluster centroid, basically the mean of that particular cluster. So if I find this centroid of this cluster, let's say that is X and X1 or up to X200. Now we have finalized the cluster. We have finalized the cluster centroid as well. So ultimately I do have 200 cluster after processing. So 200 in minority class and 200 from majority class after applying cluster centroid downsampling. So we have equally proportional data in majority class as well as minority class. So what happens after that? You can apply that data to the machine learning model. But again, the disadvantage is what? In the case of oversampling, you will have again the overfitting problem. In the downsampling, again, you will miss the useful information, because what you do is you create separate, clusters and identify a centroid which is mean, which is not the exact pattern, exact record from the data. So there are high chances that your record will be missed, and hence there are high chances that you cannot predict some of the records very perfectly. So this is the problem with the cluster based oversampling and undersampling techniques. Now let's come to the point, the technique which is MOTE. As name suggests, synthetic minority oversampling technique. You first understand this oversampling and synthetic, which means what? The name only suggests that now there is no problem of overfitting, or comparatively less problem of overfitting, just because we are not replicating the data. Because in the case of oversampling, we have observed that what you need to do is you just need to replicate the data. But here we are not going to replicate. As name suggests, it uses synthetic data. Synthetic data, which means not real one, generated data. So we are going to now generate data from the data. So now not original data will be repeated. We are going to create new data, which is synthetic data. And as name suggests, as I said, we can clearly say that from the name itself, that this will definitely reduce the problem of overfitting. Okay. So yes, one important thing to all participants, if you have any doubt, just because this is, the virtual session and I cannot understand the expressions. So if you have any doubt in between, please feel free to stop me. Or if you are, not, just a minute. If you do not feel to interrupt me, please note down all the points that you do have. After completing this session, we will definitely discuss all the points in detail. Yes. So this is synthetic minority oversampling techniques, MOTE. As name suggests, as I said, synthetic and oversampling. So the problem of oversampling is overfitting. But we use synthetic, SMOTE technique use synthetic data. So overfitting problem will not be there. Now, I have first put over here the algorithm. But before this algorithm, you may think that why algorithm is over here. First, you please explain the steps or explain the use of SMOTE, how SMOTE works. But trust me, if you understand this, or if you start with this, it will be very, very good for you to understand the entire SMOTE variants and SMOTE techniques. So that's why deliberately I have kept this, not this specific algorithm, but the kind of algorithm, the kind of steps that I have mentioned. So what we are doing is we have the minority class, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply the SMOTE techniques. So what smooth technique does? This smooth technique basically use every sample of minority class. For each sample, what it does, it finds, this is the first step, it finds the k nearest minority neighbors. Whatever the value of k that you can choose according to the number of samples that you want to generate. See, this is very important. The value of k must be that, suppose I would like to increase my sample 20 times. So you need to select the k and j value accordingly. What is j value? I'm going to tell you. So first, for every sample, you need to find the neighbors, certain neighbors. Let it, let's make it very simple. You need to find certain neighbors. After finding the neighbors, what you need to do is you need to select the j, which means the out of, let's say I have identified 6 neighbors, 6 minority neighbors of my class. So out of those neighbors, what you need to do is you need to select specific specific samples on random basis. That how many samples? It depends on the amount of oversampling desired, which means how many data you would like to create, how many records you would like to generate. So that is basically j. Once you select, so out of 5 neighbors, suppose you have selected 3 neighbors, then what you need to do is you need to generate a line between your point and the neighbor. You need to generate a line, and between this line you need to create one synthetic sample, not one, basically according to your requirement you need to create synthetic sample. This is the process. Let me just repeat again with this, that first what we do is we first create a loop. Inside that loop basically iterates on every sample of minority class. So first we will identify a minority point. Once we have the minority record, what we do is in the next step we try to identify the neighbors, right? So once we have identified the neighbors, that okay, these are the neighbors or these are the k value of my algorithm, and that's why I have identified 4 neighbors. After that, what I need to do is I need to evaluate that how many data I would like to generate. Suppose I would like to generate double observation, double data points. So what I'm going to do is I am going to select 2 points, because I have, this is about 1 minority point. So from this, for this particular minority point, I would like to select 2 nearest neighbor, and 2 nearest neighbor, which is j is equal to 2. Now in this example, j is equal to 2, that I have selected 2. Once you select this neighbor, what you need to do is you need to draw a line and create synthetic observation along a line, which means you need to draw a line and you need to create a synthetic observation. So this observation is not a replica of any existing record. So that's why we can say that it overcome the problem of overfitting. But one important thing to be understood over here is what, that okay, we understood that first take a point, then take a neighbors, then select a neighbor. Now how to draw a line, I mean, if we talk about mathematically how to draw a line and how to draw a sample over the line, and that is actually important to understand that how this has been done. Professor Chawla, who is the founder of this technique, synthetic minor oversampling technique, he came across this problem while he was performing some kind of classification over healthcare data. So he understood that okay, this is the problem with the imbalanced data set. So that's why he has introduced this mode technique, and while introduced this mode technique, he has also figured out that how this line points can be generated. It is fine that you are going to generate new points, that is absolutely okay, that it is good to not remove this particular points, it is absolutely fine. So this is a kind of case when we are going to understand SMODE. So this is majority class, this is minority class, randomly selected minority class sample, which is this. And for particular this sample, what we are going to do is we are going to identify 5 neighbors in this example. This is again, you may think that this is a kind of repetition, but why I am saying this in the third slide again, because to understand SMODE correctly, we need to understand whenever we deal with data, we need to analyze this data in such a way that by looking at the data, by analysis of the data, we can understand that which technique is to be applied, SMODE or some variant of SMODE or any other technique. So that's why I'm explaining this again and again by reframing it. So this is the value of k, which is 5. 5k, 5 neighbors we have selected, and out of 5, now what we do is we generate a line and we create a new record, which is synthetic record. So this is a kind of overall representation. After generating records, what we do is we remove this, this line, and after that we have this kind of synthetic record that we have generated. So once we have the original data set, we find the minority samples. For minority samples, all the minority neighbors will be considered, and according to your need, you need to select the specific specific neighbors, and you need to draw a line. Now, to understand how to draw a line and how new synthetic points is generated, Professor Chawla has given a wonderful equation. See, this is, by looking it for the very first time, you may think that, okay, this is a quite complicated equation, but trust me, it is very, very simple. You need to be attentive over here. We have original data points 6, 4 and 4, 3. So let's say this 6, 4 is the sample. You can consider anything, that this is, let's say, the neighbor and this is the original point, or this is neighbor or this is the original point. Fine. Okay, so this is my F1 and this is my F2. This is my F1 and this is my F2. Now what we are doing is, once we have identified a specific, let's say this is my minority class sample and these are the neighbors I have selected. Now this is the slide basically says that how you are going to plot a new point. So this particular point is, let's say, 6, 4 and this particular point is 4, 3. Now I'm trying to figure out the line on the synthetic point. So what we need to do is we need to use this equation, and the equation says that find out the difference between F2 and F1. So the difference between F2 and F1 is, let's say, F2 minus F1. So it is -2 because 4 minus 6, this 4 minus 6 minus 2 and 3 minus 4, which is -1. So we have the two new points which are required to identify new synthetic points. So we have basically find the difference. So this is the difference that we have identified. Now the equation says, see carefully, that the new synthetic point F1 dash and F2 dash is equal to your point, your neighbor, and randomly generate any point between 0 and 1. Multiply with this difference. So once you do this, you will have this synthetic data points. See, let me just go very quickly over it. Suppose the random numbers that we have generated 0.2, 0.5 and 0.8, which means I would like to generate 3 samples in this line. There are 3 random numbers I have generated. See, 5.6. The 5.6 basically is my new attribute. You understand this. 6 minus 6 plus the random number is 0.2. So 0.2 and the difference is -2. So it is basically 5.6. The same way, all the attributes are derived and this will be your new synthetic points. So this is a very simple equation given by Professor Chawla to understand that how synthetic point will be created within that line, because it is very, very important, because you cannot create data points between your minority sample and majority sample. You cannot create points in this line, because it will be considered as a noise once you apply your machine learning model, data to the machine learning model. So yes, this is the SMOTE. So SMOTE basically, if I conclude this SMOTE very finally, so SMOTE basically, what SMOTE does is SMOTE basically generates synthetic data. On which basis it generates synthetic data? It selects the minority neighbors of minority sample, and then it, by using this equation, it can generate the number of points along with the line. That would be your SMOTE. That would be your minority resample data. These are the advantages and disadvantages. The first advantage that we have seen, that is, overfitting problem is resolved. No loss of useful information, because you are not eliminating any single record. So that's why no loss of useful information. But it has disadvantages as well. And you can see that there are 2 advantages and 3 disadvantages. So SMOTE is basically not useful for high dimensional data, and overgeneralization and lack of flexibility. This is the problem. Overgeneralization and lack of flexibility. So to understand this 2 problem in detail, let's understand this figure. This figure contains minority class, this brown one, and the blacks are the majority class. Now there are noise present in this data set. This noise are this one, outlying minority class, this one, and this one. These are minority class. Now, according to the algorithm of SMOTE, what SMOTE does is, SMOTE basically iterate over all the samples, create the neighbors, select the neighbor, and generating synthetic examples. So when basically this SMOTE applies on every minority sample, including noise as well, it basically creates a kind of bridge to the existing point and to majority class. So this all will be noise, because it is a kind of mixture of the majority class and minority class. So it is very, very tough for your machine learning model to understand the pattern, because straight away noise cannot be discarded, because if we discard noise, we cannot handle the uncertainty of an event. Uncertainty, which means very, very rare event. So any machine learning model cannot straight away discard this error, discard this noise point. So this is the problem, that overgeneralization is the problem with this SMOTE. And to handle this, borderline SMOTE comes in the picture. That okay, if you do not differentiate the regular point and the noise, let me come in the picture, and I'm going to resolve this problem of not creating these samples or synthetic sample with the help of noise sample. So before we proceed with the borderline SMOTE, understand this three important thing. First is safe, second one is danger, and then this one is noise. So by again looking at the name safe, which means a particular point which has no majorly available majority class sample, because you can see that these are the minority class samples, and minority class sample have no neighbor or less number of labels or near to zero labels of majority class. So these all points are kind of safe points, that these all points are safe points. Now if we talk about noise, we need to understand the noise as well, because noise, which means when you find the neighbors of that particular point, majority of the neighbors from the majority class. So that's why it can be treated as noise. So all the data points which has majority neighbors belongs to majority class, the other opponent class or the other class. So that points will be put into the category of noise. Now this danger comes in the picture. That what is danger set? So danger set says that whenever we have this data points for which not zero and not all are the majority class neighbors, at that time those points will be considered as danger. I repeat, for this, by looking at the figure, you can easily understand that this particular point, it does not have all the neighbors which are belong to the opponent class. It has some of the feature which are belong to the opponent class, some of the feature which are belong to the same class within that class. So these points, all these points will be fall into the category of danger set. Now the problem is this: how basically these are the noise, right? These are the noise. So ideally we should not generate resample or synthetic data based on that. So what we need to do is we need to first discard this, and we need to also make sure that when you are going to identify the danger point, how to identify the danger point? Let's see the algorithm of borderline SMOTE. Trust me, the algorithm is same as SMOTE, but just we have put three conditions over there. That's it. Conditions are: first you need to identify the neighbors. The identified neighbors are M. Let's say if we talk about this particular sample. So we identify the neighbors, that is M. Numbers of majority examples in M called N. So if it has the majority neighbors, let's say this one of the example, for an instance, this particular example, this particular point, it belongs to the majority class. So this is the number called N. So now M is total number of neighbors, N which is majority neighbors of that class. Now if all the points which I have identified, yes, anybody would like to say something? Okay, fine. So you understand this. Once we have M and N, M, I repeat, M is the total number of neighbors and N is the number of records which are belong to the opponent class. out of those neighbors. So when m is equal to n, this is the case that all the neighbors that you have identified, suppose this neighbors I have identified, this one, this one, this one, this one, and all these neighbors are belong to the majority class, which means it can be treated as noise. So first we are categorizing what is noise, what is danger, and what is safe. After that, this is the case, it is put in danger set when half of the records, when half of the total neighbors and it is less than or equal to the number of records of majority class, and it is less than m. You need to understand this equation clearly. When we have the example of majority class of neighbors are equal to the half of it or greater than it, then it could be says danger set. Because see, suppose these are the neighbors that you identified, so there are some chances that the majority class are higher than all the records, or higher than the half of the records, or equal to half of the records. So at that time these points will be put in the danger set. And once you have this record like 0 or very less number of records belong to the majority class, that particular points reside in the safe points. So after creating this, what we need to do is we need to only focus on danger set. And danger set, you need to repeat that process again to generate synthetic data. Okay, so in borderline smooth, the first, it is a kind of add-on to smooth. What you need to do is you need to first identify what are the danger set, what are the interchange points, what are the safe points, and what are the noise points. Straight away disqualify the noise point and the safe points. Only generate the sample for the danger. Danger, you can say that it is more or less the points which are on the border, basically which defines the boundary. So that's why it is known as the borderline smooth. The advantage of borderline smooth is what? It helps the establishing boundaries. It clarifies the boundaries. Because see, if we look at this figure, we can understand that if these are the points, what we are going to do is we are going to generate the samples over here. And once we generate the sample over here, we can clearly distinguish the boundary of minority class and majority class. Now the disadvantage of this is what? That it straight away discard or straight away ignore this safe class, because it is not good practice. Because it may possible that the examples or the points which you have put into category of safe points may contain some useful information. So at that time you are not putting weightage on those samples. You are only considering these points and you are trying to generate synthetic sample based on it. So this information will be lost, or this information will not be considered or not applied that much weightage on those points. So this is again not the fair distribution. So that's why the next algorithm comes in the picture, which is ADASYN. Now what ADASYN does? This ADASYN, let me just straight away explain the algorithm, then we'll move to the example. First, what we need to do is we need to find the ratio. Ratio of what? Of minority class and majority class. So if, let's say, if I have 100 example of large set and 10 examples of small set, so we have this kind of ratio 10 divided by 100 in the first step. Second step, what ADASYN does, it basically calculate the number of synthetic data examples to be generated. That how many examples you want to generate. It depends on this value as well. This is a beta value. Now let me tell you, suppose the beta value is 1, which means, understand, this is the difference. So the difference between this is, let's say, 90. So if you want perfectly balanced data set, at that time you need to pick the value of B is 1, which means you are going to generate this many samples. The range of beta is 0 to 1. So if you consider, let's say, 0.5, which means you are going to generate the kind of balanced data set, but not the perfectly balanced data set. When you want to generate perfectly balanced data set, you need to keep in mind that the beta value must be 1. So this is the second step, that how many samples would be generated. The third step is, to calculate the RI or...
Sir, can you please explain the second step again?
Sorry?
The second step again.
Yes, sure. See, in the first step, we are basically maintaining the ratio. In the second step, what we do is we are trying to calculate the number of synthetic data that need to be generated from minority class. Because we are why we are here for to balance the data. One is 100 and one is 10. So you need to decide that how you are going to generate, how many samples you are going to generate data, 40, 50, 60, 70, how many data. So it can be decided using this. So the beta value again can be randomized, it can be random in the nature. But if you want to generate perfectly balanced data set, at that time the beta value must be 1. Now understand, if we set beta value must be 1, how it generates perfectly balanced data set? Because when the beta value is 1 and the difference is 90, we tell our algorithm that we would like to generate more 90 synthetic minority samples. So once we generate 90 and 10 existing, it would be 100 again. So this is kind of perfectly balanced data set. I hope you understand.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Clear, sir.
Okay. Now what we are going to do is we are going to again find a ratio, basically a ratio of what that you need to identify here I, which means you need to understand this every sample, right? So from every sample we need to calculate the neighbors, and out of all the neighbors you need to calculate that how many neighbors are belong to the opponent class. So suppose I have figured out, let's say there are 5 neighbor. I'm talking about a particular sample. So in a particular sample, I have figured out that these are the value of k is 5, and I have identified 5 neighbors. So what I'm going to do is I'm then going to maintain the ratio that out of 5, 2 are the points which belong to the 2 are the neighbors which belong to the majority class. So when it belongs to the majority class, you need to find out the the ratio that for before normalizing, that you need to identify that this out of this k near neighbor, how many examples belong to the majority class and what is the value of ratio that is defined by R. So ratio for individual point you need to calculate. After that, you need to normalize the value of Ri. This is the most important step of ADASing. And if I say it in one line, the use of the normalize is what? It is based on the density distribution. So all it is not predefined that this particular set will be oversampled and this particular set will not be oversampled. It would be based on some density distribution. Now to apply this density distribution, what we do is we are basically dividing this Ri, individual Ri that we have calculated in just a minute. That we have calculated in the third step. What we need to do is we need to divide the Ri by every sample, every ratio of the minority samples, and then we need to come up with the Ri dash or Ri cap, and that is the distribution, or to normalize the distribution we have come up with this value. After that, what you need to do is, after applying the density distribution, what we need to do is we need to again calculate the number of synthetic data example need to be generated for it. Here we have calculated for entire samples. Now what we are doing is we are trying to calculate the number of samples to be generated for a specific sample. See, there is a fine line difference between 2 and 5. In 2 we are calculating the total number of samples to be generated, and in 5 we are calculating that for this particular sample, out of let's say 10 sample, we are right now talking about point number 1. So for point number 1, how many minority examples you are going to generate, where G is the total number of synthetic data samples that we would like to obtain. So Ri is our density distribution, G is our total number of examples, and from that we came up with that this many examples, this many samples we would like to generate for a simple record. Once you finalize that, it is time to generate the record. See, you need to understand one thing over here. It basically density, and by this third step you can understand that this third step only tells us that the problem of borderline smart will be reduced, because this says that the number of majority class in the neighbor set divided by total neighbors. So this is the 0.4. So what you are going to do is, suppose my total number of neighbors are 5, and out of 5 there are 4 belongs to majority class. This would be something else, right? So this density, this normalized value of Ri, which helps us to identify that we are not going to put weightage, equal weightage to all these sets. See, here we have understand the set. So we are not going to put same weightage to all points, noise, danger, and safe points. It depends on the density distribution, that how it has been scattered through majority and minority class. What is the mixture of it? Based on that, we are generating this Ri, and from Ri we have generated that this many samples we would like to generate. And after that, we iterate loop from 1 to gi, like whatever the value of gi comes, and again we apply the same process, that si is equal to xi, which means your original point, xgi. Xgi is the point, xgi is the randomly chosen point from minority example. This is not from the nearest neighbors. This is from the all data that we have, 10 data we do have. So we are going to pick one value, which is xzi, and xi is the current point that we have, and lambda is again a random value between 0 and 1. So based on this equation, what you are going to do is you are going to generate number of samples for this specific points. And just because time does not allow us to go through that mathematical sum, if you want to try, what you can do is you can generate, you can take a sample figure and you try to calculate this all steps. You will understand that out of 10 sample, for every 10 sample, what we are going to do is we are going to generate a specific sample. Let's say 3 for this, 20 for this, and sum up for this. And if you sum it finally, it will be equal to this j. So again, for every samples, for noise, for danger set points, for safe points, we are going to generate sample, but we are not going to put straight away weightage on a specific set. Let's say danger. What we are going to do is we are going to simplify the distribution in such a way that every sample will generate new samples. So this is what ADASYN is. So this is what xzi is, our existing sample, and these are the number of samples that we have created. See here again, the number of synthetic data are not fixed. It depends on the value of neighbor, because this is a very I have faced the same question at the time of internship interview, that how you are going to, or how a particular point is going to generate synthetic example. So synthetic example generates based on this third step, which is 2 by 5, which is RI ratio, and the ratio of what? Majority class divided by all the neighbors. So majority class sample in the neighbors decides that what are the number of samples you are going to generate. So this is again very important. The advantage and disadvantage of ADASYNs are, it decides the boundary, it as well as it identify all the points over the data set. It is very important. After that, this is again a representation of every technique that we have just discussed. SMOT, which means random. Borderline, which means consider only the border points, which distinguish the boundary, and ADASYNs, which means based on the distribution, that how our points are scattered. It is deciding the approach. Now the next one, which is Tomac link. Tomac link is again the technique of downsampling, undersampling. Why I'm focusing on this explanation more, just because we are using Python to implement this concept, and when we use Python, we know that there is huge support of libraries. So in the practical, we are going to simply import the library and put call the function or call the object and apply the data. So that's why I'm focusing more on the theory explanation, because you need to understand which technique is to be applied. Okay. So this Tomac technique is again very simple downsampling technique. What it does, it identifies the pair of close instance. Say this is my original data set. It identifies the pair of close distance and simply remove the majority points. So see, this point does not exist over here. So it's basically find out the pair, remove the majority class sample. So it is basically a downsampling. It also clears the kind of boundary. It basically helps us to distinguish by downsampling. So what you can do is you can use Tomac link, but trust me, Tomac link is not individually so helpful to generate balanced data set, because you are basically discarding some information and you do not know what that information is. So it is not recommended. So and also when you have huge amount of data, so at that time it does not massively solve this problem about the observation, because very few data will be deleted, and the data which we have deleted, we do not know about the data much, that what kind of information it contains. Okay, so that is Tomac. Next one is ENN. I'm again saying that individually these techniques are not so important or not so effective, but we can use the hybrid approach that we are going to see. Undersampling this edited nearest neighbor. In this, what we are going to do is we are simply discarding the samples, majority class sample whose k neighbors are minor. See the example. See this majority class neighbors are minority class, so discard it. So these two are not present over here. So we are using this ENN, which means you need to based on your neighbors, you need to remove these majority points. Basically, you are downsampling the majority points based on the neighbors. If the neighbors are opponent, remove it. You know, this is kind of undersampling technique. Now we have discussed mode, we have discussed TOMEC, we have discussed ENN as well. So effectively, it again based on data, but my personal experience says that whenever you use this hybrid approach, borderline SMOTE plus ENN or SMOTE plus ENR or TOMEC, it will definitely give you the better performance. So this was all about the first technique, and now this is the second technique, which is second approach, which is ensemble approach. Ensemble, which means not the specific one. We are not going to rely upon a single learner. We are not using some data manipulation technique. In all the techniques that we have seen now is all about manipulating the data, that whether we are deleting the data, adding the data, generating the data, or so on. But in this technique, we are not going to touch the data. We are going to formulate our model in such a way that we can have, you know, a good amount of accuracy, good amount of result at the time of prediction. So this is ensemble technique. Ensemble technique does not rely upon a specific model, specific learner. They call that all the learners that you are going to use are weak learners. You know, this is ensemble approach, that combine all the learners together, combine all the model together, and generate out of all the result, generate the average result. That is what ensemble says. In ensemble, there are two techniques, bagging and boosting. I'm not going in detail because this bagging and boosting individually can take, you know, a couple of hours. But this is just being used to balance the data set, or not. It is not being used, but simply use the classifier which uses one of the technique. You do not need to go for SMOTE and all the things. You can simply use, you know, the classifier like XGBoost, random classifier, random forest classifier. So it will basically help us to balance the data set without touching the data. So as I said, I'm not going in detail about bagging and boosting, but let me just give you a brief about bagging and boosting. Trust me, nowadays people are, you know, preferring this ensemble techniques rather than the traditional models of machine learning. The bagging and boosting techniques, in bagging, what we do is we basically try to, you know, merge the result of all the individual learner. Suppose if I talk about random classifier, so what random classifiers does, what random classifier is using decision tree. So a couple of decision tree, it uses the result of all the decision tree and combine it and make the average result. So it does not rely upon a simple, you know, single model. It basically working in concurrent fashion, parallel it works. And when we talk about boosting, how boosting works in sequential manner. In sequential manner, which means one model is used to identify something, and once it predicts it, there are some outliers. So in the next model, our entire model, what we do is we are going to put more focus on the penalized information, or penalized, which means wrongly predicted information. So for an example, suppose out of this, let's say 30 data sets, I have correctly predicted 25 and 5 I have misclassified. So in the next model, what this boosting technique does, boosting techniques focus on those 5 misclassified points. They are putting weightage, they give more importance to those 5 points, and hence you know, that will be correctly classified. There are some chances that those 5 points will be correctly classified. We are going to repeat this process for a number of learners, and then we aggregate the result. So this is the AdaBoost technique that we use for boosting, as we have said, and this is the random forest classifier. My personal favorite is random forest classifier. So bagging technique, as I said, we use basically concurrent fashion, and we are aggregating all the data, and then after aggregating data, we take a vote. A majority vote will be considered as an answer. So this technique basically have no problem of, you know, imbalanced data set, or somewhere it resolve the problem of imbalanced data set. There are certain disadvantage of AdaBoost and random forest classifier as well. But when you are dealing with imbalanced data set, or when you are approaching this classifier to handle this imbalanced data set, you should not focus about the disadvantage of random classifier, because random classifier has disadvantage, that is for sure, but it helps us to balance the data set. So what you can do is you can combine multiple estimators, multiple models to train, you know. So that's why it is very, very essential to use. Now we are moving for the implementation, we can do one thing. I have already created the notebooks. Let me just share it. See, I have executed this cell before, so I'm not going to execute it again because it will take much time, as the data set is very large data set. No, this data set actually is small data set, fine, but to just save the time, I'm not going to rerun this. If you need clarification at a particular point, we will definitely do it, but I just want you to go through a basic steps. So see, what I have done over here till
Sir,
here
can
is,
you share this Google Colab
sorry,
in chat? Can you share this file?
I'm not able to hear you.
Hello?
Somebody was saying
Hello?
something. Yes. Yes.
Can you share this Google Colab file?
Yes. Sure. Definitely.
Thank you, sir.
So do I need to send it now or later on?
Sir, at the end, at the end.
Hello.
At
Hello?
the end of the class.
At the
sir,
end
you
of
can
your
share it
presentation,
later.
sir.
Okay.
At the
Fine.
end of
Fine.
the presentation, it will.
Yes. Yeah. Surely, I will definitely share both the files. I have created two. Actually, I have created couple of five to six files, but I'll share the important ones because once I started programming, I do not follow the standard that I need to show it to somebody. You know, that's why you can see there are some mess up codes over here. But definitely, I'm going to explain each line, so do not worry about it. See, first, importing libraries, which is very common in every machine learning problem. So I'm not discussing this. The first that I have used this customer churning prediction problem, that the number of customer leave the particular business or particular service. So see, this is a kind of imbalance problem, just because when we understand that there are, again, less number of chances that a particular customer can leave the service or leave the business. So we need to predict it, whether the customer is going to leave the business or not. That is a prediction problem. But we are using this data set to understand that this this must have the imbalanced data set problem, because there are very less customer. If we talk about a specific company, let's say Jio company, so how many users are left just because Jio is providing better service in cheaper rates? So obviously the customers are not tending to leave this service or leave this particular business. So that's why in such case this imbalanced data set can occur. So this is a customer churn data set. This is the pre-processing step I have already applied. For pre-processing, you all have attended a separate session. But let me tell you what I did is, basically I have removed all the features which are not relevant, which are not useful for the prediction. So basically customer ID, which is not at all dominant or important feature for the prediction, I have removed it. I have also removed some noise, some blank values. I have applied some kind of one hot encoder and get dummies to convert my string format into the numbers. And I have finally applied the min max scalar. You can also apply the standard scalar. Why we use min max scalar? Just to bring all the data in one range, within a specific range. Because if you are dealing with, let's say, salary and age, so age cannot be in thousands, but salary could be. So so that is kind of, because our machine understands only numbers, it prioritizes the numbers in such a way that it generates a kind of pattern over it. But we know that age and salary are totally different range. So that's why we need to apply standard scaling. And this is my personal request to all of you, that whenever you are going to deal with this kind of numeric data, which has very vast difference in range, always use any standardization, either a standard scalar or min max scalar. You can use anything. One is using standard deviation and one is using the 0-1 rule. So I have applied this kind of pre-processing step. After pre-processing step, what I did is I got the exact value, which means the correct rows which are useful for prediction. But till now I do not know whether the data set is imbalanced or not. So what I did is, again, I have used the value underscore count function for my target variable. This is my y, or people are called as target variable or the predicted variable, and the other features, other columns are known as the non-independent feature and independent feature. Sorry, independent feature and dependent feature. So X is my independent feature, Y is my dependent feature. Here my Y is churn, which means it represents that the customer has left the job or customer has not left the job. So you can see that 1869 the customer and 5163 are the customer related to the particular business, but 5163 are associated with this business till now. 1869 are the customers are left the service for the business. Now we understood that there is something, you know, problem with this data set, so we need balanced it. So what we do is this is just shape about the rows and number of columns. So number of columns are 27, number of rows are 7032. This is my creation of dependent and independent variable. This is my X is my independent set and Y is my dependent. Train and test split. See, some people are using train test split with cross validation. Always prefer cross validation, k-fold or stratified cross validation before you directly jump to this train and test split. Always prefer that. Okay, in standard problem when you are actually trying to solve the problem, always, or in most of the competitions of data analysis and data prediction, they are using all the standard techniques, not the general model. If you say that, okay, my SVM is better than the logistic regression, but they have used logistic regression, still they have higher points. The reason being, they have pre-processed the data, they have provided the data in such a way that they do not lose a single point, a tiny point. They consider every points and in the training and testing, because you know the problem of training and testing. Well, you must have attended the session of training and testing. So I'm not going in detail, but there is a problem of standard training and testing. That's why we need to go with cross validations and all. So this Y count is again the same 5163 and 1869, which is my dependent variable. Now the logistic regression model we have used. I have basically used a very basic one. Logistic regression, you can use any classifier. From the scikit-learn, logistic regression has been imported, object has been created, training has been provided to my object LR, and for that X train and Y train, and I have predicted the value. All steps I have did, and I want to do these steps. I want to repeat these steps for every technique. See, this is very important. For every technique, you need to repeat the steps. I really want you to note it down. What you need to do ideally is, you need to ideally use many models, many classifiers. Also, you need to use many techniques to balance the data set. So many relation is there. So to simplify, what I did is I have created a function, because I have created a function for logistic regression. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to handle this data I'm trying to balance the data set using many techniques. And after applying many techniques, I would like to see what is the improvement in the evaluation metrics, right? So for that, to remove the redundant code, I have basically copied this code into a function, and I have created this function. And in that, I have tried k neighbors classifier as well, as you can try many classifiers. And basically, I have printed all the standard evaluation metrics. So this is my actual data. I have not done undersampling or oversampling, but now I'm going to apply this undersampling and oversampling. For that, I need to use IMB-learn, imbalance learning in the library available in Python. Undersampling with random undersample. Again, the syntax, as I said, it is very easy when you use library. So syntax says that, okay, random undersampler return indices is true. The parameter says that because it is random undersampling, it is going to remove the number of records. Now you can also know which records are removed with the help of this parameter. So this parameter returns the number of removed records. So once you train this technique for downsampling on random nature, based on random nature, you will get this result. So now see the count of Y, because Y is my dependent variable. I have printed the count, which is 13101310. So we have basically reduced the number of sample in such a way that we can have the balanced set between the number of classes. Here this is binary classification problem. As I said, the churn is the data that it has 0 and 1 label. So 0, which means customers are associated, 1, which means left, but we have, basically resampled the data in such a way that now the data is balanced. The same way you can use the undersampler. This is my confusion matrix. This is my model accuracy. This is my classification report. Now see, one thing is very, very important. Whenever you are going to deal with this imbalanced classifier, or whenever you are going for different metrics like precision and recall, you need to focus on one thing, that do not only, there are some theories about when to use precision and when to use recall. That theory you need to follow, or based on the problem you need to understand that which particular method is useful, which particular matrix is useful for my technique. You can use ROC curve, you can use recall, you can use precision, you can use anything. Now see this, all the parameters that we see right now is basically gives me the confusion matrix. I hope you are aware with the confusion matrix: true positive, false positive, false negative, and true negative. So our target, when we understand this is the imbalance problem, our target should be what? Increase the value of this 1, which is our dependent value. You need to increase this value. Basically, you need to work on this parameter, precision, recall, and F1, as well as you need to reduce this false positive and false negative, because we are dealing with the rare event, and in the rare event we cannot handle false positive or false negative. Consider a case that you are predicting that a particular patient has cancer or not. If you say that the person has cancer, but actually the person has not, you are saying that person has cancer, which means you are saying that this is false positive. The person is not suffering from cancer, but you are saying the person is suffering from cancer. Think about the situation or the mindset of the patient. The same case can be applicable for false negative. The person is suffering from cancer, but you are saying that the person has no cancer symptoms or no cancer. So a huge disaster can happen by just a simple model. That is for us a simple model, but when you deploy it, you need to take care of such things. Okay, so 440, 92, this false positive, false negative, you need to also consider this parameters. Okay, fine. Now again, random oversampler, the same fundamental we have applied for random oversampler. Try to resample the data. In the random oversampler, see, this is again 51, 83, 63, which means these are not so reliable techniques. So that's why we need to go with TOMEC. So TOMEC basically is undersampling, and undersampling we see that, okay, 202 is when it has been increased. Undersampling, which means removed some crucial information. So we need to do this 62, 64, and 63. One important thing over here is no professor, no teacher can teach you which technique is to be used, because it purely depends on the data that you have gathered. It purely depends on the pre-processing techniques that you have used to formulate the data. So do not go with the thumb rule every time. You need to go with every possible evaluation matrix and every possible scheme. Here, every possible classifier. Here we are only seeing the number of ways to balance the data set. After that, we can also see the number of classifier with every scheme, with every techniques to balance the data set. So TOMEC links, we have generated this classification report, and this is basically this that I forgot to tell you, that this is ROC AUC curve. See, this is ROC AUC score. ROC and AUC I'm sure that you have gone through. If not, this is again very, very important parameter, that ROC and AUC area under curve, that is the maximum area under curve, which means we have covered maximum samples. So this is very, very important when you are dealing with imbalanced classification problem. Okay, after that, okay, so we have reached to the TOMEC, and after that, yes, SMOTE. We have used SMOTE, simple SMOTE. Okay, so we are trying to increase the sample of minority class. There are some variation available which we can use for changing the strategy with minority class, majority class, or it is auto, which means based on both the classes. So it is known as hyperparameter tuning that you need to perform. But right now we are seeing a very basic one, simple one. So we have reduced We have balanced the data set in such a way that 0 is 3612 and 1 is 3612. 0, which means customer are associated and customer are not associated. And when we see this classification confusion matrix, it seems good that this has been reduced than TOMEC, but this false positive has been increased. So obviously the simple SMOTE is not so applicable, and the ROCUC curve is 0.85. The same way adaptive synthetic we have used, we got 3612 and 3513 records. See, again, this is not perfectly balanced, but somewhat balanced, greater than 5%, not a rare event. Fine. And we see that the accuracy is 72%. Here we have reduced 86 and 494. Precision recall is quite improved. Precision has been reduced. F1 has been reduced. Hybrid approach, SOMAT plus TOMEC, SMOTE plus TOMEC. In SMOTE plus TOMEC, we are using the same. This is perfectly balanced data set, and we can see that this is also increased, and this accuracy is 74%. The same way for SMOTE plus ENN. This is not a perfectly balanced data set, but the evaluation matrix says this is 89%. So I think in that case, we can also go for SMOTE plus ENN, which is recall based. So, we need to consider F1 and F2 score as well. Here I have not printed the F1 score. This is basically F beta is known as, if you have gone through the evaluation matrix. So this B parameter, it can be 1 or less than 1. So when you assign the B value greater than 1, which means you are focusing on recall. So you would like to generate, you are more pressurizing on recall, only recall values. Less than 1, which means you are focusing on the precision. The same way I have implemented borderline. This all are the inbuilt libraries. I have not done so much in the implementation. So I have just importing the libraries, calling the function, printing the result. It shows that, okay, it is 85, 62. See, accuracy can be 74, 75, 74. It's fine, because now we are not focusing on only accuracy. We are focusing on this parameter as well. After this, borderline SMOTE, see, this many techniques we have used. Now, if you note it down in such a way that to balance the data set, we have used SMOTE plus, let's say, TOMEC, ENN, then the borderline SMOTE, ADASYN, and random undersampling, random oversampling. This many 7 to 8 techniques we have used. But if you have seen carefully, we have only used one classifier, which is logistic regression, which is very, very simple and basic one. Because we see that it is not effective to use the basic classifier. You can use K-neighbors, you can use SVM, you can use any other regression, classification technique as well. So here I have directly jumped to the second approach, because in theory we had conducted this random forest classifier. As in random forest classifier, we do not need to manipulate the data. We have just trained the random forest classifier, and after training the random forest classifier, we got this value 181 and 269 and 62, 556, which is again, you can see that the course has been precision recall has been reduced. So definitely we cannot simply use this random forest classifier. Recently I have performed 2 or 3 machine learning applications, in which what I did personally is, the record is about sport data analytics of football of a particular club of Manchester, in which we were working in a team, and what we had done is, how we got the effective result. We have used random forest classifier. We have used hyperparameter tuning. For hyperparameter tuning, we have used grid search CV. And we have also applied, this is this, simple data, which means actual imbalanced data. But what I did in that case, I have used random forest classifier. I have used hyperparameter of random forest classifier. Plus, I have used not the actual data. I have used the data, resample data by one of the technique which gives better precision and recall. So for an example, in my case, if I talk about this SMOTE and ENN has given the perfect result. So I have used this X_ENN and Y_ENN in random forest classifier. So think about the case that the performance boost when you apply hyperparameter tuning, when you apply balanced data set by one of the technique, and when you use the ensemble approach, bagging ensemble approach. So it will definitely boost the performance of your model. I'm again not saying in your data that you are using, you can achieve better performance every time. It cannot be guaranteed in any case. It cannot be. So see, one more thing that I want to share it with you. Just a minute. see this club. What I did is, let me just explain this final step, because above that I have done all the pre-processing and all kind of operations. See, I have implemented this many techniques for balancing the data. I have done with actual, smooth, Edacin, smart plus Tomac, smart plus EN for logistic regression, for decision tree, and for random forest. So you need to apply this many techniques. You need to apply on different classifiers, and then you need to visualize. I mean, it is not always necessary to visualize it, but if you visualize, you can clearly, firmly say that this particular technique of balancing the data set and this classifier is best suited classifier for my data set. So this is, again, I have implemented for the customer churn prediction for provided by the Kaggle telco company. The telco company has given the data set to the Kaggle, and I have downloaded from it. I have applied some kind of processing, and finally I have generated the result. So this result says that this is a kind of figure that SMOT plus ENN gives the better result in random forest. Because why? See, decision tree is also good, but not the best out of these three, because decision tree is the single learner. While we talk about random forest, it does not rely upon a single learner. It is a combination of so many decision trees, so many weak learners. So by combining all the weak learners, we generate a strong learner. And that is how people in the industry follow the rule, because as I said, 80% efforts you are required to put in the data pre-processing. Because we can see that, like, say this, when we try to fit the model, we only call the library. Suppose I have used the library over here of, let me tell you this is the model and decision tree. So this is my estimator. I have applied grid search CV on decision tree classifier. What I did actually, if you see carefully, I have only imported the library and called the function. That's it. So there is nothing like, major achievement. I'm not saying that there is no kind of work, but not major achievement in applying your data to your model. Which kind of data you are applying to model is very, very important thing in machine learning application if you are dealing with real-time application. So that is it from my side. Thank you for being an attentive audience. If you have any doubt, I'm here. We are here to discuss. So please let me know if you have any doubt. And yes, I'm definitely going to share this material with all the participants.
Thank you very much, sir, for such a wonderful and knowledge-rich session. Dear participants, if you have any question, you may ask now.
Yeah. Good morning, sir.
Yes. Good morning.
Yes. Actually, I just now scanned for your IMB Learn library, but I'm seeing on internet and on the PyPy, I see two different. Like one is IMB Learn, one is imbalanced-learn. So which one to use?
Actually, you can use any, but I prefer IMB Learn. Because
IMB Learn is in 2017, but this imbalanced learn is 2021. So,
but this is not compatible for every algorithm. So, you need to modify. Especially, I had the problem with when I was implementing Edacin balancing technique, where I've used this imbalanced learn. At that time, I need to manipulate. The algorithm for nearest neighbors. So at that time, I could not able to simply load this Edacin algorithm. What I need to do, I have to write the algorithm from scratch. And to be honest with you, I have just copied the Edacin algorithm from GitHub, and I need to, manipulate the neighbors. So it is not always necessary to stick with one library. You can change the library. You can see the performance difference. But I prefer IMB Learn till now.
Okay, one more thing is there with the prerequisite, there are SciPy, NumPy, Keras, TensorFlow, all these terms we are compatible with. But there is one library called JobLib for this. So can you tell something on this? What is this purpose of this JobLib library?
See, this is do you know the term pipeline?
Yeah.
Yes. So basically, it helps us to achieve this. When you pipeline the data, when you merge two kind of techniques at that time, if you are, if you are trying to accommodate the records in such a way that no particular information should be lost. So at that time, when you want to remove some redundant information, when you want to take care of any specific information that should not be, discarded, all the data, which means we are providing one output of one technique as an input to another technique, we use this joblib library.
Okay, this is something like in a computer
Pipeline.
architecture, the pipeline, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Actually, we can achieve pipelining by using some different methods as well. It is not always to use the same library, but yes, you can use the joblib.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions, please? Okay, sir, I think you have already covered all the fundamentals, so the participant may not have further questions. So thank you once again, sir. Thank you for your presentation, and thank you, participant, for your attention.
Thank you, sir, for inviting me, and all the participants. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, dear participants, we are ending session 1 here. We will start our second section right at 12:30 p.m. So please join a
The
little
file
earlier.
will be shared in chat or in Teams file?
We will share in Teams file once we will get it from presenter. And we will also provide links of all the materials at the end of the day today.
When we will submit, sir, which file?
We will set it as an assignment very soon, sir. It will have 3 questions and very near to the feedback kind of questions there will be.
No, sir, you
No,
have
actually,
already
it has been
you have
given.
already shared in assignment 5. Quiz
Yeah,
5.
you already have shared, and
Yeah.
the time end is given as by tonight, like 11:59.
Yes. Means our
PM.
other
Yeah.
organizing team members may have said it. Okay, you may
Yes,
start
it has been shared,
writing that
right.
questions because it is containing common questions which will not related with the upcoming sessions as well.
Okay.
So you may
Sorry
start
to
attending
disturb
that.
you, sir. Hello, sorry to disturb you. We float
Yes,
the
ma'am.
feedback form in a group, in a WhatsApp group.